I said yes only for the trip and the ring. I never planned to spend my life with him. My fiancé sent me a voice note by mistake. Even her sister helped plan the theft of my assets, but they never expected that message to wreck their entire scheme. You weren't supposed to hear this. But I mean, I'll probably say yes just for the trip and the ring, obviously. But I'm not going to spend my life with him. That opening line hit me hard. Just 17 words. 17 horrible, stupid words that shattered my reality and tore a hole right through my chest. I was in a Target parking lot. Nothing dramatic, just a typical Tuesday afternoon. I had picked up her clothes from the dry cleaner, bought a spare charger for her MacBook, and was waiting in the car for traffic to ease up before driving home. My phone vibrated. A voice note from her. She rarely sends me voice notes. It played automatically through the car's Bluetooth speakers before I could even process it. I froze instantly. The air in the car turned poisonous. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I mean, I don't hate him. He's nice, but he's so boring. God, sometimes I swear if he tells me one more story about concrete or bridge design or whatever, I'm going to throw myself into traffic. I crave excitement. I need someone who makes me feel something, not someone who sorts my laundry and calls it love. The next second stretched into a year. There was a pause, then a small laugh. Anyway, don't feel bad for him. He'll survive. Guys like him always bounce back. They're built for loneliness. I was still holding her dry cleaning. A lilac sweater slipped off the hanger and landed on my car floor, a final, unnecessary slight. She had intended to send that message to her sister or friend, whoever receives her venom when I'm not around. But she sent it to me, and now I finally understood the truth. This wasn't a minor obstacle. It wasn't pre-wedding jitters or stress. This was her genuine self. And I was done being the man she used as a stepping stone to her next phase. That night, I didn't cry. Not yet. I packed my bags slowly, meticulously, and without a sound. But before leaving, I did one more thing. Something she would never forget. Something she never saw coming. I left behind something she couldn't simply undo. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now to the rest of the story. I didn't pack like a person fleeing. I wasn't weeping while stuffing clothes into bags with a sad soundtrack playing. No, my movements were methodical, like an accountant closing the annual books, composed, effective, deliberate, one drawer at a time, one piece of my life at a time. She was still at her Pilates class or wherever she went to falsely project self-improvement. I had at least 90 minutes, and I intended to use them wisely. I only took what was essential: my tools, my papers, my grandfather's old watch, and a jacket she always disliked, but I secretly cherished. Everything else, the shared furniture, the framed pictures of our fake happiness, the silly scented candles she insisted gave our place ambience, I left untouched. I wanted her to feel the silence when she walked in. She needed to notice the absence, not the residue. Before I sealed the final bag, I opened her closet. Her wedding dress was hanging in a clear plastic bag, all delicate lace and deception. She had obsessed over it for weeks. I recalled the night she modeled it for me, twirling like a little girl, saying, "Can you believe someone like me is marrying someone like you?" I had simply smiled, the perfect fool. I didn't damage it. That's not my style. Instead, I took a small note, wrote 8 words with a black Sharpie, and slipped it inside the clear bag right beneath the dress's neckline. "Now I know why you never seemed happy." I didn't leave it on her pillow. I didn't send a text. That note, placed on her treasured gown, would strike deeper than anything I could say, because she wouldn't see it immediately. Not until she retrieved it again. Not until the wedding day was imminent. Not until she believed she had succeeded. I placed my key on the kitchen counter and walked out the door. I stayed in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town that night. The sheets had cigarette burns, a light hummed over the mirror, and the kind of silence that corrodes the soul was everywhere. But it was preferable to the apartment. Our apartment now felt like a crime scene. I couldn't sleep. I kept reviewing her words, analyzing the tone, the laugh, the casual cruelty. It wasn't just what she said. It was the ease with which she said it, as if she'd practiced it before, as if I was the last person to learn what everyone else already knew. Around 2:47 a.m., I checked her Instagram. She had posted a boomerang of her clinking wine glasses with some guy on an unfamiliar rooftop. The caption read, "Grateful for the people who see the real me, the real her." She didn't know it yet, but she was about to discover what I had seen. I wasn't done digging, because that voice note was just the surface. I had a terrible suspicion the deception ran deeper than I cared to admit. So, the next morning, I began to investigate the cracks in our supposed life. And that's when I found something she assumed I'd never see. A second number on our shared phone plan. A burner phone, hidden under a fake name, with a history that would unravel everything. The phone that should not have existed. I usually handled the phone bills. She always claimed the numbers confused her, and I, being the dependable idiot, accepted it as a compliment. I never questioned the line labeled a UX device, assuming it was her iPad or a smartwatch she never wore. But sitting in that motel, examining the PDF of our latest bill, I noticed something odd. It wasn't a tablet. It had an active call and message log. The number was registered to a Ramona Grigg, a name I had never once heard her mention during our entire relationship. The billing address was ours. The device model was a burner phone, prepaid and untraceable. She'd just been sloppy and linked it to our plan, likely to save money. Typical of her. I called the number. It went straight to voicemail, and it wasn't the default robotic voice. Her voice said, "Hi, this is Taran. Leave a message if I trust you." Her name, her voice, her utter self-importance. I felt physically ill. I waited until noon, certain she'd be at one of her pretentious lunches or vanity meetings, and then I returned to the apartment. I still had the garage access code. She never imagined I'd come back. I was in and out in under 10 minutes. The burner phone was concealed behind a pile of linen boxes in her closet, the spot where I once offered to install shelving, and she screamed at me for disrupting her flow. It was inside an old sunglasses case, wrapped in a pair of leggings. She genuinely believed she was a genius. I turned it on. What I found was unexpected. There were no explicit photos, no suggestive texts, no romantic heart emojis with some guy named River or Kai, or whatever names I had imagined over the past few days. No, this was far worse. It was subtle, strategic, and deeply layered. There were messages going back over 8 months between her and a contact saved only as C. No last name, no picture, just a letter. But the messages, God, they weren't about romance. They were calculating and cruel. They discussed me as if I were a business deal they were finalizing. He thinks the prenup is just a formality. I told him it's for my dad's estate. Haha, once the papers are signed, I'll make my move. I want to be out by winter. I'm keeping the loft. And if he complains, I'll play the panic card. You were right. Guilt is most effective on men like him. I just have to act hurt and fragile. And he folds. Folds. Was that her perception of me all this time? That I would just fold? Like I was some origami version of a man she could manipulate at her convenience? One voice message was more impactful than all the others. She said, "Honestly, I've been rehearsing how I'm going to cry when I say I need space." He'll believe it. He wants to believe I'm still the girl he met, but I'm not. I outgrew him 2 years ago. I just didn't want to move while the housing market was still crap. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button, a pointless reflex, but I didn't delete it. I backed everything up to a flash drive. Dates, times, files. I was no longer merely a victim. I was the witness, and I possessed the evidence. I left the apartment again, slower this time, profoundly exhausted. That day didn't conclude with a decisive action or fiery vengeance. No, it ended with me sitting alone in my truck in a gas station parking lot, eating a stale protein bar, asking myself the most foolish question of all. Was any part of it real? The laughter, the kisses, the Sunday mornings with pancakes and records, the way she used to cling to me in bed and whisper, "Promise me we'll never get boring." Was it all a stage performance? Or was I just the guy she practiced on before she became the woman she wanted to be with someone else? I didn't know yet, but I was determined to find out. If she wanted to treat this like a business transaction, I would show her just how ruthless I could be when it came to minimizing my losses. The ex who was forgotten. There was a guy she never discussed, but his name lingered in the quiet corners of her mind. Women like her are adept at leaving parts of their past unmentioned, though never truly buried. His name was Mike. 2 years ago, I saw his name flash on her phone. Not a text, just a missed call notification. When I inquired, she winced, offered a strained smile, and said, "Oh, he's just some ghost from college. Nothing to worry about." So I dismissed it. But that was before I knew about the burner phones, the fake names, and the private plans that involved folding me up like a beach chair after the honeymoon. Now I was worried. I didn't have Mike's last name, but I remembered her mentioning during a tipsy late-night story that he played drums in an indie band in Columbus. A quick Google search led me to an old photo on a forgotten Facebook page, then to an Instagram that hadn't been updated in 6 months, but his email was public. I wasn't sure what I'd say. I expected nothing, but I sent the message anyway. It was brief and honest. "You don't know me, but I'm Taran's fiancé." Or I was. "I think you might want to talk." He replied in 10 minutes. "Meet me at Sacred Grounds on 6th at noon. Don't bring her." The coffee shop was tiny, fashioned out of an old church with wooden beams overhead, misfitting chairs below, and a barista who seemed to despise joy. Mike was already there when I arrived. He wore a black hoodie, his eyes hidden behind round sunglasses, his hair short. No smile, just a nod. I sat across from him and tried to gauge if he already hated me, or if I was simply a painful reminder of a mistake he hadn't avoided in time. He skipped the small talk. He just said, "She did it to you too, huh?" My throat suddenly went dry. It was a strange kind of comfort, the worst kind, realizing I wasn't unique, not even in my own heartbreak. Mike told me they dated for 3 years. She left him on a Tuesday. No warning, just a note and a deactivated number. He said it nearly destroyed him. She drained their joint savings, claiming they were starting a design business together, then took the money, launched her solo brand, and vanished completely. It was the first time I heard the phrase, grand emotional larceny, and it stuck with me. But what truly horrified me wasn't what she did to him. It was his next statement. She said the exact same things about me that you're probably hearing now. That I was boring, predictable, that I wanted to trap her in a small life. She works from a script. You're just in the latest act. I showed him the messages, the voicemail about her fake tears. He didn't even flinch. Yeah, that tracks. I asked him who he thought C was. He looked down, stirred his cold coffee, and said, "You're not going to like this, but I think it's her sister." That revelation struck me hard. Mary, her sister, the one who cried when we got engaged and claimed I was the only man she'd ever seen truly love Taran unconditionally. Mike leaned forward and whispered, as if it were a crucial secret. They've always been more of a team than a family. You were never marrying her. You were a shared investment, something they planned around. Don't take it personally. It's just their nature. We sat in silence for a while after that. Two men, years apart, caught in the same shattered scheme. He paid for my coffee. I didn't object. I left that place with a mind full of ghosts and a churning stomach. I called my mom, just needing to hear my name spoken by someone who wasn't lying. She didn't know anything was wrong, but she said, "You sound thin, Curtis, like you're wearing your bones on the outside." I merely told her I was tired. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I examined every picture, every text, every moment of laughter from the last 4 years, trying to determine if any of it was real. The emptiness persisted. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was still compiling. Because how do you respond when someone meticulously plots your destruction? You don't scream. You don't cry. You orchestrate your departure so perfectly that they don't realize you're gone. And when they finally notice, all that remains is the void you left behind. The game they never knew you were capable of playing. People assume revenge is loud. They imagine throwing plates, keying cars, yelling in parking lots while neighbors film it all on their phones. But real revenge isn't like that. Not for people like me. My revenge wasn't fire, it was ice. And it began the night after I met Mike, when I opened her laptop with steady hands. Did I know the password? Of course. Golden hour 92. Her favorite time of day and her birth year. Cute, right? I used to find it romantic. Now, it felt like the key to a vault where she stored pieces of every man she had ever exploited and discarded. I wasn't looking for sordid secrets. I didn't expect to find another affair or a hidden bank account. I was searching for leverage. I needed to know the full extent of this, exactly what she thought she had constructed around me. It turned out she kept folders for everything. Literal folders, not just wedding budgets and venue contracts, but a folder titled Exit Strategy. Inside were notes, spreadsheets, and timelines. There were even draft Instagram captions she planned to use to announce our amicable split after the wedding, complete with hashtags about personal growth and learning to let go. As if my heartbreak was just a branded moment awaiting its scheduled post date. But the true blow was a spreadsheet itemizing assets, furniture, appliances, my truck, color-coded according to what she believed she could claim in a post-nup settlement. She had labeled it projected life earnings. I stared at that term for a long time. Projected life earnings. I was not a person to her. I was a collection of belongings and emotional responses she thought she could expertly manage. Suddenly, the sadness evaporated. I stopped replaying that voice note. I stopped questioning what I had done wrong or how I could have loved her better, because this wasn't a failed relationship. It was a sophisticated heist, and my only error was failing to realize I was the safe. So, I started to dismantle her plans quietly, efficiently, like someone doing a thorough spring cleaning. I immediately froze the joint bank account she was using for wedding deposits. I sent a courteous email to our venue coordinator indicating the event might be subject to cancellation. I transferred the down payment savings to a private account solely in my name. She didn't notice. She had long since stopped verifying those financial details herself. Then I called my friend Eli, who owed me a favor from helping him through a messy divorce. He's a family lawyer now, specializing in prenuptial agreements. I sent him the screenshots of her spreadsheets. He called me back 20 minutes later and said, "Curtis, you need to get out of there before she files anything first. If she files with those documents, she'll walk away with far more than she deserves." I asked him for guidance. He said, "Burn her plan before she lights the match." And so I did. The next day, I met with a notary and had my own document drafted. It stipulated she waived all rights to my personal property, assets, and vehicle if there was any proof of misconduct, deception, or a premeditated exit strategy. I hadn't served it yet. That wasn't the goal. The point was its existence. It had power, and it finally made me feel grounded again. Meanwhile, she maintained the pretense, texting me about cake tastings and whether we should update our seating chart to include her cousin's new boyfriend, because he's super big in the crypto world. I replied with emojis and sounds good, babe. I allowed her to believe I was still trapped in the snow globe she had built, but I wasn't. I was outside now, observing and constructing my own strategy. The final trigger arrived 3 nights later via an anonymous email. No subject line, no body text, just one screenshot. A picture of her with another person. They weren't kissing or touching, but they were sitting close, laughing, and she was looking at him the way she used to look at me when I still believed love was straightforward. The name tag on his shirt read Carson. The contact in her burner phone, the mysterious C. She hadn't even bothered to disguise his real name. That was the last piece of the puzzle. The final confirmation that this was not confusion or doubt or miscommunication. It was entirely deliberate. She intended to destroy me slowly, in phases, under the cover of a mature breakup. She had no idea I was already tearing out the foundation beneath her, but she would find out soon enough. The dress fitting was in 3 days, and I planned to be there, just not in the way she anticipated. This time, I was the one putting on a show. It's a bizarre sensation to enter a room where everyone still thinks you're madly in love. They offer you warmth, small smiles, and casual nods that imply, this guy is so fortunate. If only they knew. The boutique's fitting room smelled of eucalyptus, and quiet music played from hidden speakers. Everything was a pale shade of lies. Ivory, champagne, blush. Her mother was present. Her sister Mary was sipping something from a crystal flute, like she had already secured her victory. I wanted to scream out loud, but instead, I simply smiled. That's my nature. I learned from the best. If they wanted a performance, I would give them a standing ovation. Turan looked radiant. That's the cruel irony. She stood on a small platform in front of a triple mirror, half-zipped into a dress that seemed straight out of a bridal fantasy magazine. She didn't see me initially. Her back was to the door, and the stylist, an overly enthusiastic intern named Ava, was adjusting the hem with reverence. When she finally turned and saw me standing there, she blinked like I was a ghost. Not fear, just surprise, as if I had no business existing outside of her narrative. Curtis, she said, her smile so sweet I could feel my teeth decaying. I walked in slowly, holding a small white envelope. No threats, no outbursts, just the one thing she hated most, the unknown. I thought I'd stop by, I said, placing the envelope on the glass counter next to a rack of shimmering veils. Just wanted to bring you something. Mary arched an eyebrow. Her mother shifted awkwardly. Ava looked between us, confused by the lack of drama. Turan took the envelope carefully, her eyes scanning my face for clues. I made sure she found none. What is it? She asked, forcing a strained laugh. Just a little something to mark the countdown, I replied. Then I left. No dramatic exit speech. No, we need to talk. I simply walked out, leaving her in the center of the room, the supposed queen of a sandcastle, holding the envelope as if it might detonate. Inside, she would find a copy of the addendum to the prenuptial agreement I had drafted. The one she hadn't seen, hadn't signed, and certainly hadn't anticipated. Along with it was a letter. It wasn't handwritten. She would have cherished that, and I was no longer interested in giving her anything she valued. In the letter, I revealed everything. No accusations, no profanity, just stark facts and quiet bombs. You once told me I was the safest man you'd ever known. You said it like a compliment, but I realize now you meant it as an excuse. You sought safety so you could plot your escape without worrying if I'd noticed the door opening. You wanted a man who would believe your lies because the truth is too much for you. Here is mine. I know about Carson, about the burner phone. I know about the projected life earnings. You thought you were playing chess, but you were merely moving pieces on a board I had already overturned. I concluded with a single sentence. If you still want the wedding, you'll have to sign that new agreement in front of my lawyer first. The brilliance of it was that she couldn't scream. Not there. Not in front of her mother. Not in that dress. She would have to wait until later, when the lights were off and the mask was finally dropped. And by then, I'd be long gone. That night, she called me 3 times. I didn't answer. Then the text arrived. You're being cruel. I laughed out loud in the darkness, like a man who had finally given himself permission to feel. She was right, of course. I was being cruel, but only because I had been kind for too long. Kindness was a language she never bothered to learn. And cruelty, when executed correctly, doesn't need to be loud. It can be a whisper that resonates longer than any shout. So I waited, because I knew Turan would not just walk away. Not yet. She would try to salvage her image, to maintain the illusion long enough to figure out how to regain control. But she didn't realize the next move was already in play. And this time, the audience would not be applauding her. I was certain she would make it public when the spotlight hit her. That was Turan. She didn't react. She performed. Pain wasn't something she acknowledged. It was something she repackaged. She would never rage in a voicemail or a text message. No, she would wait until she could frame the story, so she was the misunderstood heroine. I anticipated a cryptic post, a pretentious quote like, "Sometimes growing up means letting go of what you thought you needed." But what she did was far worse. She threw an engagement party. A surprise one for me. She sent out invitations through one of her PR clients. Sleek black and gold digital cards. No RSVP, just a time, a place, and the promise of an unforgettable night celebrating love, loyalty, and new beginnings. I didn't even receive an invitation. I found out from a mutual friend who messaged me, "Hey man, congrats. I didn't know you guys were back on." I hadn't spoken to her in days. Yet, here she was, crafting an entire narrative around our reconciliation, dragging my name into one last charade before the inevitable collapse. I could sense it. She wasn't just attempting to save face. She was completely backed into a corner. The prenup addendum, the voicemail, the spreadsheet. She knew the walls were closing in. And in her mind, a public spectacle was the best way to pressure me back into her script. It worked on everyone else, but not on me. So, I did the unthinkable. I showed up. Not because I wanted to see her, and not because I cared what lies she told them, but because there is a unique power in confronting a falsehood while it's still trying to be believed. The venue was a rooftop garden above a boutique hotel downtown. Fairy lights, signature cocktails, and music loud enough to prevent any genuine conversation. The crowd was mostly her circle: influencers, stylists, former clients, people who communicated in hashtags. I walked in alone, wearing the same black suit she once said made me look secretive. She had no idea. When she spotted me, her entire body stiffened, like a puppet whose strings had been released. But then the smile appeared instantly, as if she could still salvage the situation. She walked over and leaned in for a kiss. I turned my cheek. The surrounding cameras caught the deliberate snub. "Honey, I'm so glad you came," she said, clutching my arm tightly, smiling at everyone but me. I looked around and said quietly, "Why don't you tell them what this really is?" Her eyes remained steady. "Curtis, please," she whispered through clenched teeth and a fixed smile. So, I picked up the microphone. I hadn't intended to speak. I wasn't even sure I would stay 10 minutes. But standing there, watching her revel in borrowed affection, I realized I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to curse or expose screenshots. I just needed to state one truth clearly and let reality take over. I tapped the glass. The music volume dropped. A few people clapped instinctively. I waited. Then I said, "Thank you all for coming, truly. I know many of you believe you're here to celebrate love, but tonight isn't about that. It's about timing. Because sometimes, just before a wedding, you discover something that makes you question whether the person you're marrying loves you or loves the version of you they can manipulate. And when someone spends more time planning an exit strategy than planning a future, perhaps the real celebration isn't the engagement. Perhaps it's the escape." I offered a slight smile. I'll toast to new beginnings, and to finally seeing people clearly, no matter how long it takes. I set the microphone down, walked past her sister, past every insincere smile and polished outfit in the room. No one tried to stop me. And outside, in the quiet city, I felt a sensation I hadn't felt in months: lightness. But I wasn't finished. 2 days later, I received a letter. Not a text, not a call, a physical envelope. Inside was a printed photo of us from 3 years ago, taken during a trip I had forgotten. On the back, in her handwriting, were 5 words: "You ruined everything too soon." That's when I understood she had one final desperate move left, and I had just set it in motion. Finally, I chose myself. I stared at the photo for a long time. It didn't hurt anymore. I looked at it because I barely recognized the man in the picture. He looked exhausted, even then. He was smiling, yes, but with that look people get when they've convinced themselves that simply surviving counts as happiness. His arm was around her, of course, but it seemed like he was holding on out of fear, not love. And her message on the back, "You ruined everything too soon," initially felt like a punch. But then I laughed. Not bitterly, not meanly, but with genuine amusement. Because she was absolutely correct. I did ruin everything too soon. I ruined her performance. I ruined her illusion. I ruined the version of myself who would have stayed silent, signed the papers, and awaited the slow heartbreak delivered in a gift-wrapped box called an amicable divorce. And thank God for that. After that letter, she went silent. No follow-up texts, no dramatic speeches. She just vanished, the way people do when their last gambit fails. I assume she spun a new tale, one where I was controlling, cold, or terrified of commitment. That's fine. Let her tell whatever story helps her sleep at night. In the meantime, I moved. I left the apartment, the city, and the echoes of a life built on emotional debts. I leased a small place on the outskirts of Asheville. It's modest, but it has a porch that catches the morning sun perfectly. I started freelancing. Fewer hours, less money, but more room to truly breathe. I even bought a secondhand guitar, the one she always said was a phase I was too old for. Turns out, I wasn't. Some days are still heavy. I won't pretend otherwise. Healing is a messy process. There are mornings when I still wonder if any of it was authentic, if the way she looked at me ever meant anything. But then I make coffee, I play a few chords, and feel the sun on my face. I remember that I exist independently of what she wanted from me. One day, maybe I'll meet someone who doesn't see me as a project, a temporary substitute, or a stepping stone. Someone who doesn't flinch when I speak honestly, who doesn't mistake kindness for weakness. But until then, I am content with being alone. Not lonely, but alone. There's a vital difference. The last time I saw her was by chance. 6 months later, in a grocery store in Nashville. She didn't see me. She was arguing with some guy near the produce section, a phone in one hand and what looked like a wedding magazine in the other. I walked past quietly, unnoticed. I felt no anger. I felt no sadness. I just felt entirely free. So, for anyone reading this, if you find yourself shrinking your own worth so someone else can feel important, leave. If someone uses your stability as a weapon against you, leave. And if someone builds a future with you just to rehearse their final exit, don't just leave. Run, and never look back. Because sometimes, ruining everything too soon is the best damn decision you will ever make. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe for next. Bye for now.